Now children, come to this line. Next morning, Miss Jarvis Lorry was putting the finishing touches to his appearance before going for breakfast in the dining room of the Royal George Inn. Now it was going to be a very difficult day. As a man who had devoted his life to the impersonal business of financial affairs, he was not looking forward to a meeting that had to do with a deeply emotional matter. So over here, through these lines, we come to know that Mr. Jarvis Lorry was to have his meeting with a female, that was Mademoiselle at Dover. But over here in these lines, he was giving final touches to his appearance that showed that he was a bit conscious about his looks, and for the first time in his life he was going to have a meeting that was related to some emotional matter, because throughout his life he had been dealing with financial affairs only, but he had never had any experience of dealing with emotional matter. So he seemed to be quite nervous over here. Unlike most gentlemen of his age, Mr. Lorry had never married. So one more aspect of Mr. Lorry comes out over here. Okay, in previous lines we read that he was 60 years old. Okay, and then we learnt that he had been dealing with financial matters only throughout his life, but had never had a meeting with anyone that dealt with emotional matter. Over here we come to know that he was totally devoted to his work, that he had never got married. Okay, he was a spinster. He would willingly admit that he was married to his work, and if asked, he would almost certainly say that he had no regrets. That he was not at all, he had no regrets means that he never complained that he was not married. Like he was married to his work. Already he had worked for Tellson's Bank for more than 30 years and was one of their most trusted employees. So here we come to know more about Mr. Lorry. So over here we see meeting of Mr. Lorry with Mademoiselle. Mademoiselle is a French word for madam. Then children, as usual, he was wearing his brown suit, not very different from all the other brown suits he had worn during the long working life. So throughout his life, though a worker in a bank, he wore this attire, brown suit, and it was a very, it was a very common thing for him that he mostly he wore this suit only. Okay, he looked into the mirror on the wall. It was not that for the first time he was wearing brown suit, but throughout his life, being into such a profession, he wore brown suits only. But at this hour, when he was to meet somebody, he looked into the mirror on the wall and put his small brown wig more squarely on his head. Squarely means that shows that he was very conscious, nervous about his looks also. He was feeling nervous, he was conscious about his looks. Okay, he was time and again giving final touches to himself and looking into his mirror, and finally he wore an artificial hair. Wig is an artificial hair. Clear? He was not ready for this meeting. Over here it shows the reluctance of Mr. Lorry is shown in these lines, that he was not ready for this meeting. He was not prepared for this meeting, but he knew that he never would be. Okay. When Mr. Lorry had finished his breakfast, a waiter discreetly came up to his table. So very secretly, attendant, okay, the waiter comes near to him. A message, sir, from a Miss Manette. She says she is ready to receive you. Now over here, please children, note it down. Sir, from a Miss Manette. When you meet a stranger, when you don't know who this Miss Manette is, so that's why this Miss Manette is used over here. So this waiter means to say that there's some Miss Manette who is ready to receive you. Thank you. Mr. Lorry took a deep breath and drank the last of his tea. Took a last sip of his tea. Okay, and took a deep breath. Over here again it shows the nervousness which Mr. Lorry had. Okay, why? Because he was meeting He was going for some impersonal matter for the first time in his life. He then followed the waiter to Miss Manet's apartment. Apartment is room. When he entered, he saw a young lady of not more than 17 standing by the fireplace. Now children, you know what is a fireplace? Fireplace is a place, it's in the Western countries. You'll find this kind of fireplace where this the logs of woods are burnt to keep the room warm. Okay, so this is the lady. She was 17 years old. Okay, standing there. This is what Mr. Lorry finds her. Now when he entered, I'll repeat this. When he entered, he saw a young lady of not more than 17 standing by the fireplace. She was short with an aristocratic air. Aristocratic air means with the royalty in her ways. So that shows she was royal in appearance and in a ways, and a full head of blonde hair. Blonde hair is curly golden hair. As he entered, her clear blue eyes met his. Okay. A look of inquiry showed that she did not know why she had been asked by the bank to meet this man under such strange circumstances. So she had so many questions in her eyes. Okay, and because she was very much puzzled at why she had been called there. Okay, Mr. Lorry looked at her beautiful face and recognized the pretty nose and cheerful eyes of the baby girl he had last seen nearly 16 years ago. That means Mr. Lorry recognized her. She was the same girl whom he had met when she was quite small 16 years ago. You must be Mr. Lorry. Yes, of Tellson's Bank, London. Okay, so this is Miss Manet. This is Mr. Lorry speaking. Please take a seat, Mr. Lorry. They sat at a small table close to the fire. This has to do with my father's property, I believe. So this is what Miss Manet assumes, that why she has been called there. It must be something dealing with her father's property. Mr. Lorry clearly did not know where to begin. Miss Manet, I have been working for Tellson's for all my life, but for the first 15 years I worked in Paris. Tellson's does a lot of business in France, you know. Now Mr. Lorry seemed to be quite nervous to speak to Miss Manet because he had never ever had a chance to go for such impersonal matter before. So he did not know from where to begin. So over here he reveals out his hesitance, like how he doesn't know from where to start. But then he started off with his own profession at his own bank. I see. Miss Manet wondered how this could possibly concern. Now, when she heard Mr. Lorry speak, she simply replied, I see. But then she wondered, she was really much puzzled that how could all this ever concern her. Okay, that how I met your father, it was a business relationship. You understand? I'm a man of business, you see. But he did trust me with many of his private affairs. Then he just, takes the matter up till here. Mr. Lorry, perhaps I can help by telling you what I already know. My father was a doctor from Beauvais. You may please underline this. Here we come to know about Miss Manet's father, that he was a doctor, and he hailed from this place named Beauvais, who married an Englishwoman, my mother. That is correct. Now over here in this line, through these lines, Miss Manet tries to help to Mr. Lorry to pursue the topic. Okay, then he says that is correct. My mother lived. These are the words of Miss Manet. My mother lived for only 2 years after my father's death. When she died, it was you who brought me to England, where I have been provided by Tellson's Bank. Provided for means that I had been financially supported by Tellson's Bank. That is not strictly true, Miss Manet. Tellson's Bank is only carrying out the wishes of your father. We were given the task of looking after your father's money and seeing that you were well cared for. So then he clarifies, he says it's not that Tellson's Bank is not providing, it's not giving you financial assistance. It was all because of your father's will. Your father wanted that you should be well taken care of. Tellson's bank has done a good job. So she compliments him. He says that Tellson's bank has done a good job. That means Tellson's bank has been taking well care of her by providing her financial support. She smiled. Mr. Lorry, unaccustomed to such compliments, blushed slightly. Okay, with a smile, Miss Manette gives a compliment, and Mr. Lorry, who is not used to such compliments, starts blushing. Thank you, Tellson's bank. Thank you. Tellson's bank takes its duties very seriously, Miss Manette. So Mr. Lorry speaks these words. But please, Mr. Lorry, tell me why I have been called here today. Jarvis Lorry's discomfort began to show. His face tightened and his lips moved, but no words came out. Over here, you find that Mr. Jarvis Lorry felt choked. This is a condition when you are not able to speak. You have the words, but the words do not come out. So your face becomes tightened. Tightened means he became quite serious. Okay, now the actual matter had to be discussed with Miss Manette, and he felt choked. Though he wanted to speak, but the words did not come out. He was very much nervous. The hard part had come. Now, Miss Manette, I would like you to consider just for a moment the possibility that your father may be alive. Miss Manette's mouth dropped open, and she caught Mr. Lorry's wrist with both hands. Mr. Lorry, please go on. So, over here you'll find that Miss Manette feels mouth dropped open means she was shocked and surprised to hear the words of Mr. Lorry that the father whom she thought to be dead could be alive. And that's how her reaction was. She held both the hands of Mr. Lorry tightly and asked him to continue. Okay, now she becomes impatient. Miss Manette, you must understand that I am a man of business and these matters are not easy for me. Then he tries to explain her. Are you saying that my father is in a manner of, now this dot is like this, is simply assumptions. Okay, she just stops there. In a manner of speaking, alive, but greatly changed. He has been taken to the house of an old servant in Paris, and we are going there. I to identify him, if I can, you to bring him back to life with your loving care. So with these lines, Mr. Lorry clears out. He says that yes, you can say that your father is alive, but he is not the same person. He is not the same personality. He is a changed personality. So for that, and he informs her that he is now taken to the old servant's house in Paris, and both of them will be going there. She will be going there to bring him back to life with her loving care, and he will be going there to identify him. Mr. Lorry could feel her hand shiver as she spoke in a low voice. I'm going to see his ghost. It will be his ghost, not him. Now here you can see the reaction of a little girl for whom her father was supposed to be dead. No, she had not heard of her father before till she came to her senses. Okay, she had become, now she was almost 17 years old, and now she comes to know that her father is alive. And how could she must be feeling? How could she feel at that moment? So he says, that's why she says, I'm going to see his ghost. It will be his ghost, not him. There, the best and the worst now. Very soon you'll be at his dear side. One more thing, though, your father has been found under a different name. His was forgotten or concealed. That means he informs her that your father will be found under a different name. His name would not be revealed out. His name might be forgotten or may be hidden. We don't know which, and it would be dangerous. to even ask. So, as we read, times are very hard in France and we must be very cautious. Cautious means careful. I beg you not to say anything about the subject. Subject is Dr. Manette. To anyone until we have brought him safely to England. This is a secret service. Even my messages and notes have been condensed into the one line, recalled to life. Condensed means shortened into one life, that is recalled to life, which may mean anything. But what is the matter? Miss Manette, are you all right? Now see, Mr. Lorry, he reveals out all secrets about her father, Miss Manette's father. On the other hand, you'll find the daughter is really in a shock. That's why he says, Miss Manette, are you all right? Perfectly still and silent, she sat with her eyes open and fixed upon him. This is the, shocked state. You'll find Miss Manette is in a shocked state, and these are the words. She sat there still and silent, with her eyes open and fixed upon him, but with the expression of unconsciousness carved upon her face. Her hold on his arm was so strong that Mr. Lorry feared that letting her go might hurt her. Therefore, he called out loudly for help without moving. Because he did not even move because Miss Manette had held Miss Lorry's hand so tightly and he could not relieve himself. Okay, he thought that if he do so, she might get hurt, and therefore he started calling for help. A large woman with a head of wild red hair and a red face swept past him and rushed to the young lady with a troop of servants following behind her. With a vigorous full energy of a general in the battle, she slapped a determined hand on the poor Mr. Lorry, sending him flying into the wall and releasing Lucy's grasp on his arm. Grasp is hold. What is grasp? Is hold. Okay, so that is how this lady, the large woman, she comes and she releases Lucy's grips from Mr. Lorry's arm. Mr. Lorry, on recovering his balance, now you see when that large woman, she throws Mr. Lorry away, he goes flying into the wall. Mr. Lorry, on recovering his balance means he balances himself, okay, and this prevents himself from falling, was now most uneasy. He was only a man of business, after all, and most unaccustomed to being flung about by a sergeant at arms in skirts. So he says that he could never imagine in his life that a day would come that a sergeant, a soldier dressed up in skirt would ever throw him in air like that. Look at you all. Don't just stand there staring at me. Am I so much to look at? So these are the words of that fat woman. She screams to all the attendants. She tells them, don't just keep standing over here and keep staring at her, because am I so much to look at? Am I so good to look at? Fetch something means go and bring something. Bring smelling salts, cold water and vinegar, quick. So why does she ask for all these things? Because she finds that Miss Manette is in unconscious state. She is now still and silent. She's not reacting. She's not responding. She's in a shock. The servants obeyed immediately, rushing from the room and returning almost instantly with all that was necessary to revive the girl. Revive means to bring back into life. To bring back into life. Now over there Miss Manette was almost unconscious. Now therefore the servants obeyed the order of that fat woman and they rush and come back instantly means immediately with all those necessary things required to bring back the girl into life. When Miss Manette began to recover, Miss Lorry, who had been standing all this time watching and praying, breathed a sigh of relief. Breathe a sigh of relief means took a long breath that thank God she is all right. I hope she'll be all right now. These are the words of Mr. Lorry. These are the words of Lorry. Okay. The woman was calmer now. Earlier, woman was enraged. It was in a great tension, because that shows that the woman took well care of Miss Manette. She was a caretaker. Okay. But could not withhold an accusing look. But she could not stop herself giving an accusing look at Mr. Lorry. Why accusing look? Because she blamed Mr. Lorry for creating such circumstances that made Miss Manette unconscious. Right? Yes, but no thanks to you in brown. So she seemed to be in a very, not in a good mood, because she blamed Mr. Lorry for causing such a trouble to Miss Manette. So couldn't you have told her what you had to say without frightening her to death? Do you even have a name? Now see, she blames him, and she tells him that whatever you had to tell her, whatever you had to speak to her, couldn't you do something without frightening her to death? Now she indirectly she questions him. She asks him that what his name is. I'm Mr. Jarvis Lorry of Tellson's back, London. I'm here to accompany Miss Manette to France. Well, Mr. Jarvis Lorry, I hope you'll be better prepared to care for my girl on your journey than you were today. Now she tells that just if you are taking her for a journey to France, you should take better care of her. I hope you will take up better care of my little girl. She stroked the girl's face with her large fat hand. Stroke is just move her hand up, like from top, move her hand on the hair of the girl's face. Okay, on the girl's face. Okay, she just moved her hand on her face. My precious, my bird, are you better now? So over here you can see, with these words we can really make out that fat woman really loved. She was Miss Manette. She was really worried about her well-being. After a few moments, Mr. Lorry realized that he was indeed ill-prepared for such episodes. Ill-prepared means he realized that if anything could happen in the absence of any help, he could not have done anything. Okay, so he says, and that the red-headed woman could be a valuable assistant on their mission to France. I hope you'll be coming with us. So these are the words of Lorry. A likely thing. If I were meant to cross salt, do you think I would have been born on an island? What does it mean? Over here through these lines, the fat woman, the large woman, gives a very sarcastic reply. She says that, do you think that it was necessary if I were to cross the salty water, do you think that she should have been born on an island? Okay, because salty water is of the oceans. She stood up and faced Mr. Lorry, who had to admit that despite her bad temper, she had a kind face. It gave him the courage to speak. I could hardly say, Miss, you may call me Miss Pross. So, with these sarcastic words, we come to know that Miss Pross was ready. That lady was Miss Pross, okay, and she was ready to accompany Miss Manette to France along with Mr. Lorry. Children, this is the end of chapter number 1. So please go through this chapter once again, okay, and just try to read it and go through the important the words meanings also. You can note it down. Just check your dictionary and please note down the word meanings and try to solve the question answers.